It's no secret that nostalgia for the 2000s is incredibly prominent nowadays. People are looking into the past a lot, reminiscing on their childhoods and whatever came out when they were kids. Everyone talks about how during elementary school you go to the family computer, boot up Windows XP, and look up Minecraft Herobrine videos on YouTube. We all miss it, let's be honest with ourselves. This rise in Generation Z and millennial nostalgia has been packaged into a lot of major aesthetics that are popular within those demographics. Y2K is a 90s and early 2000s aesthetic, categorized by early CGI graphics, shiny metallic blobs, and a utopian look into the future. Webcore is a mid to late 2000s and early 2010s aesthetic, focusing on the amateurish look of early websites and YouTube videos, as this time period was when digital technology and the internet were becoming more readily available to the public. And finally, liminal spaces are the underbelly to our childhood memories, being the in-between that we ignored for so long, focusing on the empty creepiness yet comfort we experience from each of these recognizable locations being taken out of their contexts. However, I'm not going to be talking about any of those today. All of those aesthetics have been talked about to death and continue to thrive within the modern day. What I'm going to be talking about is an aesthetic tied to the 90s, 2000s, and even 2010s that everyone seems to have forgotten about. While it didn't get a name up until recently, I'm talking about Frutiger Aero. Frutiger Aero is an aesthetic that was incredibly popular in the 2000s, used a lot by corporations in advertisements, marketing, and general graphic design. The term Frutiger Aero was coined by Sophie Lee in 2017, based on both Adrian Frutiger, the creator of the Frutiger font, and the Windows Aero designs of Windows Vista and Windows 7. Side note, there is no official pronunciation for Frutiger Aero, so I'm probably going to be using a lot of different pronunciations in this video. So, what exactly am I talking about when I mention this aesthetic? Well, the Frutiger Aero aesthetic is categorized by glossy textures and rounded designs, with the usage of water, glass, bubbles, animals, nature, and cities. While Frutiger Aero is futuristic to an extent, it focuses less on a fantastical utopian future like Y2K, and more of a realistic utopian future, focusing on the beauty of Earth with people inhabiting the world like it's a perfect place to live. Fittingly, one can consider Frutiger Aero an evolution of the Y2K look. Both were used by corporations, look and feel futuristic, and focus on a glossy or blobby look with tons of gradients. However, while Y2K focused on cutting-edge technology, Frutiger Aero focuses on the beauty of planet Earth and its people. It's apt to call it a humanist aesthetic. Humanism, for those who don't know, can be defined as an outlook or system of thought attaching prime importance to human rather than divine or supernatural matters. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize common human needs, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. Frutiger Aero is meant to be very calming and easy on the eyes, and this is apparent with its use in, well, everything in the 2000s. Let's start with marketing and advertisements. The advent of computers and the internet really took the world by storm, but it was still new, so people were apprehensive to use it. Well, what better way to show that technology was a worthwhile endeavor than to show people using it? Not only that, show it paired up with natural life. Water, plants, animals, the earth itself, all this could easily draw people in, especially older crowds who were very apprehensive to use it. There's about 1 million images of a fish jumping out of a computer, or animals hanging around a television, or a gorgeous green landscape with a city full of skyscrapers on the horizon. A ton of these graphic designs were very eco-friendly and looked clean. The use of glass and clear surfaces definitely accentuated this clean look, along with soft but vibrant colors, especially white, blue, and green. You know, the colors of the clouds, sky, and ground. The use of humanism and nature really reeled people in. This type of advertising was blatantly apparent with Samsung's slogan for the Galaxy S3, designed for humans, inspired by nature. It was as if the technology came from Earth itself and was made for us. Why would you not want one after hearing that? The wallpapers for the Galaxy S3 and the wallpapers for a ton of different operating systems were stills of life. From dandelions, to wet blades of grass, to auroras, to people just living in the moment. All these wallpapers really do capture life itself. The most famous image possibly of all time, fits this aesthetic perfectly. Microsoft Bliss. The lush grass of the curved hill, the perfect blue with the countless clouds in the sky. This is Frutiger Aero. Which is funny, since this is so commonly paired with Webcore, but I digress. Since I mentioned Microsoft Bliss, a lot of the early internet landscape was shaped by Frutiger Aero, or at least the presentation of it was. As I said earlier, Frutiger Aero was named after the style of Windows Aero. That glass look is easily recognizable to anyone who grew up using a Windows computer. Even Mac computers sort of had this style. YouTube itself was inspired by Frutiger Aero at one stage. The logo especially has the essentials to the aesthetic. That bright red and the shine, oh, it's so good. The layout of the site itself also had shiny, glossy buttons that look like actual buttons ready to be pushed. This is actually a perfect example of a certain design philosophy known as skeuomorphism, which is actually a key factor to Frutiger Aero's look. Skeuomorphism is when an object has a design that looks similar to a more outdated design. Some real-life examples would be lights shaped like candles, or a push-button phone that's shaped like a rotary phone. The designs are outdated, but it's to help people understand how something works better, or it's just for aesthetic purposes. A lot of early websites use skeuomorphism with the design of buttons or other things you're meant to click, as the buttons had a 3D effect to them. Other examples include note apps that resemble real-life paper, music programs that have loads of buttons and knobs, or the trash can icon resembling a real trash can. Going back to YouTube, the old mobile app icon was a 3D TV. It's strange that it wasn't YouTube's logo or something similar, but it still represented YouTube well enough through skeuomorphism. YouTube is where you tune into channels and watch videos, just like TV, so the icon was supposed to help newer crowds understand what YouTube is. Speaking of mobile, early digital phones, especially the early iPhones, utilized skeuomorphism perfectly, with every app icon popping out to you, and a lot of app interfaces representing real-life things. The default backgrounds were beautiful pieces of scenery, and even a shot of our own blue marble. And beyond that, the home button was indented so it felt comfortable on your thumb. Steve Jobs revolutionized the world with the iPhone, not only with what it could do, but how it looked and felt. And while Frutiger Aero dominated the internet, that wasn't the only place you could find it. The gaming industry was swept up by Frutiger Aero, with the entire 7th generation of gaming consoles having this aesthetic not only in their physical looks, but in their digital looks. The menus for the Wii, PS3, and Xbox 360 are iconic and nostalgic. Everything looks vibrant and colorful, and you could easily get lost in the menus alone for hours, just because of how pretty they look. And funnily enough, it wasn't the consoles that were the first to adopt this look. The Nintendo DS and the PSP were. And you can quite clearly see the Frutiger Aero inspiration just by looking at the menus alone. While the aesthetic was more so a design philosophy for marketing and graphic design, the general look of Frutiger Aero managed to sneak its way into some pieces of popular culture. A lot of these pieces of media are typically set in the future or somewhat modern day, such as Robot Boy, Phineas and Ferb, Avatar, B-Movie, yes I'm serious, and WALL-E. We'll come back to you later, WALL-E. The world of Frutiger Aero in gaming was not just restricted to its menus, as some of the most famous examples of this aesthetic come from video games. Mirror's Edge, Portal, Electroplankton, if anyone even remembers that, Journey, Sonic Colors, Spore, Mario Kart Wii, Roblox, Connect Sports, the list goes on. Every single one of these games placed a lot of importance on life itself, or the cleanly look of a futuristic dystopia. With all this talk about the future and technology improving people's lives, being everywhere in Frutiger Aero, how much of that was actually truthful? Yes, stuff like the iPhone and Windows XP definitely changed how we experience life, but it's not like in the commercials showing everyone using it in a green backyard. In fact, some say that our use of the internet nowadays has made human lives less connected, which you've probably heard to death, so I won't go into it, but it's still true. Despite the green thumb message of Frutiger Aero, technology consumes a lot of energy from the planet, and pollution is still a relevant problem. Which, well, ironically, is the fault of corporations, the ones saying that the future will be green. And take a look at these images for a minute. On a first glance, they look fine, but staring at them for a long period of time, they feel incredibly artificial. Like an alien was trying to replicate what Earth looks like. We could probably attribute this to the poor graphic design programs from yesteryear, but it also goes to show what Frutiger Aero actually is. Let's go back to WALL-E for a minute. By and large, its aesthetic is perfectly Frutiger Aero, as it was meant to emulate the look of companies at the time. There's even a by and large website that perfectly replicates mid-2000s sites. All this talk about promises, importance of life and family, the importance of products. Well, because of by and large taking over the globe, everything becomes polluted and uninhabitable, and by and large say they're going to fix it. And so everyone is brought on the spaceships to live in the stars as Earth is cleaned up. But, well, something goes wrong. The axiom never returns to Earth, and Earth never heals. The people of Earth, in the words of the captain, are simply surviving, not living. So consumed in technology and products and the corporation they live under that they can barely be considered people. And all of this is under Frutiger Aero, the aesthetic that drew in so many people across the globe to buy by and large's products. And that aesthetic is readily prominent in WALL-E, especially on the axiom, where everything is shiny and clean and blobby, and corporate. At the end of the day, this aesthetic, as pleasing to the eyes as it is something born from a corporation. It wasn't made to be artistically pleasing, or to have a bigger message to it, or to even be seen as art. It was made to sell products, to advertise. But there's still something about Frutiger Aero that's different. It has passion. It has a creative mind behind it. It is artistically pleasing. It feels like it was made to have a bigger message to it. And compare that to today's world of graphic design and marketing. Bland, simple shapes, single colors, no depth, no creativity, everything looks the same. Unless I told you what came from where, you wouldn't be able to tell what corporations or products these are supposed to represent. Frutiger Aero was different. It had charm. It had a personality. Everything wasn't homogenous with each other. But as people moved in the 2010s and the 2020s, companies just gave up on trying to appeal to people once they became household names. Everything has to look minimalist to maximize profit, nothing to be offended at if it's simplified to the most extreme degree. I'll give you a perfect example of corporation losing personality with consumers. Here's a shot of the Wii and Wii U's menus. Now, here's the Switch's menu. No ambience, no unique look, no flavor, just a bland slideshow for you to scroll through to select a game or app. Everyone knows how bland Windows 8 looks. Modern phones have been stripped of life, even in their default wallpapers. No sight of grass or earth, just generic art pieces or boring pictures. Xbox One and Xbox One X also look incredibly bland and basic. PlayStation 5 has kind of kept its personality, but it still looks like every other menu. Even logos weren't safe. Everything has to look the same and safe. Simplify, minimize, shrink, strip it of all of its personality. It's a product. It's just meant to be bought. Frutiger Aero, at the end of the day, was a corporate aesthetic meant to lure in customers in the early 2010s. But despite that, it shaped people's childhoods, even if they didn't know it. It inspired people, it was an amazing look, it got people looking and talking, but once the future came, it was all swept under the rug. So, what now? Is this aesthetic just soulless and corporate? I don't think so. In a world where everything seems hopeless and continuing to get worse, we should look into why Frutiger Aero exists in the first place. It was made with a bright future in mind. technology was going to be what bridged the gap between yesterday and the future. And I think we should tap into that mindset. There are things that can be done with technology that can help people even more and make our lives even better. And we should focus on that and see what we can do to make the future as bright as it was once told to us, instead of accepting doom and gloom. The aesthetic captures a certain feeling that can't be caught with many other graphic designs. Maybe it's time for a revival. I'll have some links in the description of some places to look for more Frutiger Aero content, or hell, you can make something inspired by it yourself. We should definitely try to remember what we saw in years past. There's a reason why we wanted the future to be beautiful. Maybe by remembering Frutiger Aero and how optimistic people used to be, we can help make this aesthetic our reality.